Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Survivor 50 Wishlist podcast, an off-season series where we're trying to figure out who could and should come back for the upcoming returnee season of Survivor 50. My name is Mike Bloom, and I can confidently say this is my podcast because today we are talking Survivor One World, a very interesting twist. Perhaps used on not that interesting of a season, but certainly one that produced a couple of memorable players and arguably one of the greatest winners of all time. But how does that boil down to who we want to see again? Only time will tell. And I'm so excited to be bringing this guy on as he is waiting for the days of Big Brother 26 to arrive. Here we're going to talk about a Survivor season where everyone was trapped on one beach for the entire season, much like a Big Brother house. It is the one, the only Aman Adwin.
Hey, super excited to be here for this. The minute that I got asked to be a part of it, I obviously jumped to the opportunity. And when they asked me what season I wanted to cover, this was one of my top choices. So I'm glad that I'm here sitting down with you talking about this crazy season, which I took some time to. I haven't watched the season back in its entirety since being asked, but I have watched a lot of the episodes, sort of jog my memory, and whoa, some of that stuff is woo, it's one world, all right. It's some kind of world. Yeah, I'm excited to dissect it all today.
Yeah, so I gotta ask to elaborate on that because, listen, we're still in the dark ages of Survivor. The light is at the end of the tunnel. Philippines is tomorrow, but we are still in a period of time that is definitely defined by lesser quality seasons. One World is a part of it, whether it be a bit more of the boring steamroll towards the end with the women's alliance, whether it be, to your point, perhaps some characters of ill repute, especially viewed in a 2024 lens. So I'm curious, what made you want to pick out One World as one of the seasons to discuss here?
I think it's because it's one of the first seasons that I actively Um, I don't know. It's very counterintuitive. It's because if I could so when I think about Big Brother 19, I am always,
as you often do.
as I often do, I'm treated by the fact that it has one of my favorite winner. Well, actually, he was my favorite winner until recent history. In Josh Martinez. But what I think about the most is just how enraged I was. And yes, that's not necessarily a positive emotion to have, but sometimes reality TV is gonna make you just incensed. It made me very, very invested in watching so many of these people go home and get their just due. That's instantly when they asked me what seasons do you want to cover, I just thought about this because okay, if I'm thinking about who I want to see come back, I think this is very easy because I know who I don't want to see come back. So yeah, I just remember feeling so much frustration in this season, and so I just thought it'd be an interesting one to cover from that perspective.
Well, what's also interesting about it is, despite the fact that I think this is regarded as a lesser quality season, it features nearly a third of the cast. 5 people have returned in some way, shape, or form. I think One World falls in this really interesting point in Survivor history where we had just had returnees come back in, obviously, Heroes versus Villains, in Redemption Island, in South Pacific. They take the rare season off, and then we're about to get into Philippines, Caramo, and Blood versus Water, all of which have returnees in it. So I think it came at the right time in that it was this newbie season that came right before 3 more seasons where people could possibly come back. We're going to see certainly representatives in Blood versus Water. We might have seen them at some point in Caramoan and Philippines as well that we'll get into. So I do think this season had a little bit of right place, right time from a returnee status. But I also, look, every season to me is about not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, that even the worst seasons of Survivor have moments, characters, strategies that are interesting to talk about. And I really do feel like, Aman, the titular twist, One World, there was so much there. And I think even in these first couple of episodes, you could kind of see it, right? With Michael stealing the chickens from the women, but also they're living right across the beach from you. And so you have to deal with that fallout. And it really stoked the fires of this gender war that would become a full-on inferno by the end of it. I just think maybe due to the cast and the way the season went, it didn't necessarily prevail the way that maybe producers hoped it would. And so unfortunately, it kind of feels a bit DOA.
Yeah, I mean, it's no question that when they were casting for this particular season, they went and found people that have reprehensible beliefs about gender and, what that entails and what kind of role you should play and all of that. And I'm sure they made them ask, they asked the same types of questions all throughout the casting process, really hammering that ideology into their mindset so that by the time they did reach the beach, it's like all gloves are off. I'm ready to show the producers that I can play ball and give you what you want. And it makes for interesting television because you want to see these people get their just due. But at the same time, it is like when you look back on it, a whole like 13-ish years later, it's like, this definitely represents some of the dark parts of reality TV. And I'm glad that we've sort of come out of that in a sense. But also, there's something to be said about watching these people just sort of like speak a little bit more freely, speak their minds, and just sort of be unabashed about some of the views that they have. And it's just like, okay, on some level, it is a bit refreshing because everything can be so sanitized and so manicured these days. But it comes at a cost. Being able to say whatever you want to say, it comes at a cost. So hey, it is what it is.
Would you possibly like to see the One World twist itself return in a future season where we never separate both tribes, or maybe in the new era's case, all three tribes are living on the same beach at the same time?
I kind of would like to see that because aside from, the whole gender thing of it all, it does cause like complications outside of all of that. Like we got to see it during this season about, Colton constantly trying to spend time with the girls to the point where like at first they're like, we love you, we support you, you got a friend in us. But at the same time, you're still a guy. So you can't be over here all the time because who knows if we piss you off one day, you might go over there and tell the guys everything that we're thinking. So I do feel like having three tribes on one beach could really make the game super, super interesting. And I don't know, maybe you might see a redux of one of the tribes being like, you know what, I am willing to give up immunity because I need to send this person home. And I
That's
know
the
all of
thing.
you feel this way about this because you guys also live with this person and you know that he's horrible. So please let us send this person home. So I think that could be very interesting.
And that's the thing again about not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I said this about Nicaragua as well. For what it's worth, I think these first 4 episodes, the pre-swap portion of One World, is actually pretty fun. Where you
Mm-hmm.
have the fallout from everything with the women. Cat has not fully grown into like her full cat self, but still is showing signs of that cat that we know and love. And then over on the men's side, we get like a fantastic fall from grace for the muscle broy foursome that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
realize that 4 into 9 is out. That's going to be a few seasons away and gets promptly overthrown by the Misfits to the point where, in an unprecedented move, with the exception of like what one tribe did in Fiji, they are going to win immunity and say, now we're going to go to tribal council anyway. And Jeff's look on his face as he watched the men march in is just a piece of art in and of itself. Even if there are, as we'll get into, I think, questionable circumstances around the boot behind that, it is just an absolutely wild representation of what these people were doing at that point.
I still can't believe that he allowed it. But you know, if I can find an immunity idol, right, and gift it to another player, then if I'm on the same beach as another tribe and we win immunity, who's to say I can't gift the immunity win to them? Like it's essentially the same transaction. It's just for more people. So yeah, that kind of thing can't happen when you have the tribes that are separated. So it is interesting to see whether or not something like that could happen again. So yeah, I never even really thought about it. So I actually kind of want that to happen now. I really do.
Well, especially in the new era when you have these tribes that are just sitting on their hands the entire time, right? Not going to tribal council. They wish that they could trade it in. They'd be like, Jeff, can we get
Mm-hmm.
fishing gear if we go to tribal council? Can we get a little bang
Right.
for our buck right now?
Right. Like give us the flint, please. This is hard.
Well, speaking of Flint, let's start with these women that lit this game ablaze. And I do think something that in the moment made me appreciate One World was the fact that we had this incredibly dominant women's alliance. They become, the only season where the final 5, the group that makes the finale, are all made up of one gender. They end up starting this alliance on day 1 on the walk to camp, and it lasts all the way through to day 36. And we have these 3 in particular to thank. We have, of course, Chelsea Meissner, Sabrina Thompson, and our winner, Kim, Spradlin, Wolf, whatever last name you want to give her. We call her Kim here because she is first of her name, Queen of One World. And I would argue, Aman, one of the best winning games in Survivor history.
Yeah, it was to the point where it was annoying. I remember when I watched the season for the first time, and there were so many times when she was just so undercover and so under the radar, and all these people were like freaking out around her. And I'm like, dude, it's her. It's her. Like, why are you not see? Like, do you not understand? Like, you have no control right now because she has it all. And there was a point like during like the last like 3 or 4 episodes, I was like, I want Kim's head on a platter. I'm so sick of it. I want it done. But of course, it was never going to happen. And now that I've grown since then, and my appreciation for intense social strategy has vastly increased over the past decade and plus years, every time I look back on the game, I'm like, girl, like, you got to give it to girl. Like, it is what it is. Like, there was no other way. There was no other option. There was another win that I would have loved, but there was just no other option this time. Like, Kim really just did the damn thing. It was insane.
Well, the thing is, as well, is that she really felt, especially at this time, to be the rare perfect package of a Survivor player, where, of course, the strategy was there. She was the one that pretty much plotted every single move that she participated in of the season, from making this women's alliance, then making this like just in case alliance on the swap tribe, to then convincing Troyzan and Jay to get rid of Guy so that then they could just run the table and pick everyone off. She's the one that decides that Kat goes. She convinces Alicia to go after Tarzan instead of Chelsea, where she basically handpicks her opponents in the end. Then there's the social side, where this was the last time we really did like the touchy subjects challenge, and she was voted, I think, as the one that people would trust most with their life, overwhelmingly so. So it wasn't even like she was this Russell Hantz type slitting throats and everyone disliked her along the way. Everyone absolutely loved Kim. And from a physical perspective, she ties the record of women individual immunity wins, where she won 4 total. She found an idol that she didn't even need to use. It's just such an immaculate performance. Kim will, of course, reappear in Winners at War, where it doesn't go as well, but she actually takes that on the chin. You know, it's always interesting to watch a player dominate so much, come back and get humbled. And in true Kim fashion, she's, you know, not necessarily walking in braggadocious, guns blazing. She felt very much, I think she said in her like little exit on the mat interview after losing the Edge of Extinction challenge, she's like, this was my worst nightmare come true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember, like, you know, when Winners at War was announced, you know, this is pandemic era, we're all like sitting on our hands, just, you know, not knowing what to do with their time. And this gets announced, and we were just so excited. And, you know, there was just no way that Kim was not going to be there. I remember being very, very scared, because I was like, every time you have like those under the radar games, like it most of the time you're worried that it's not going to work again, because everyone's watched your season. Mm-hmm. On top of that, everybody's a winner. So everyone has a bit of an ego. They want to be able to prove that, you know, their first win was not a fluke and they can do it again against the best of the best. So I was very concerned. And, you know, when she came into Survivor 40 and she kind of was still doing that thing and it seemed to be kind of working, and I was like, okay, this might work out again. Obviously, we know how the story ends, but I feel like in a way that, like, sort of like what you said before, it doesn't really tarnish her legacy, because I think that's another concern that a lot of us had about some of these winners is like, if they lose, like, what does that mean for how we look at their game holistically? And to me, it's just, it doesn't, like, Survivor 40 for Kim is like a blip. Like, I still go back to 24. Like, I didn't need Survivor 40 for Kim. I didn't. We wanted it and it was great to watch, but like, I'm good with 4 sis or 24 sis. Like, it's fine. Like, Kim is still Kim. As you know, Sandra always says, the queen stays queen, the Kim stays Kim. So it is what it is.
And unfortunately, we're going to say adios to her chances of playing Survivor in the future. Kim said in both her deep dive with Rob, as well as when she did a Survivor 42 podcast a couple of years later, that she is officially retired. She said she always wanted to come back after One World, just because there was that itch and she wanted to see how she would do, to your point, when everyone was able to clock the game that she was playing. And she is okay with the experience. Again, she learned a lot about herself, but it was very much in a way of like, yeah, I don't want to do this again, though. Especially that aspect of the edge. I think as much as Kim spend one of the least amounts of time there. It saps a lot out of you. So she has expressed a few times that she is done playing Survivor. But listen, she is booked and blessed, Aman. Did you ever watch her on Why the Heck Did I Buy This House on HGTV?
No, I haven't. I'll have to check that out.
That's her show. She is fully segued into becoming like a home renovation TV personality.
Oh, I did not know that. That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that's
I know she
great.
linked up with a fellow winner Wendell as well on a couple of those things. So yeah, she was able to
Okay.
parlay this into a very fun career. And suffice it to say, she's done decorating shelters for the time being.
Yeah. I mean, that is disappointing to hear. I mean, obviously happy for her to, go where your life is meant to go. And she's making the best decision that she can for herself. Obviously, she's on my wish list. We know it's not going to happen, but of course, like Survivor 50, we know it's all going to be returning players of varying statures. I don't know. I feel like Kim could do some damage again, and it's sad to say that she is going to decline. But we would have loved to have you, Kim. Maybe she's lying. Maybe
Yeah,
she's a good liar. She
she's
could
a
be
good
lying.
liar.
She
Well,
might show up.
Aman, the sad news continues. I'm
I know
moving one
this one
space
I
to the
did
right.
know about.
So let's talk Sabrina here. Sabrina Thompson, in my opinion, an incredibly underappreciated runner up.
Yes.
It
Yes.
sucks that she ends up losing the game to Kim freaking Spradlin. She did get 2 jury votes against Kim freaking Spradlin. And I feel like maybe you've watched the season more recently than me, so you can attest to this. I feel like Sabrina's time from an air perspective was really in the beginning of the game where she finds the
Mhm.
idol on the beach. She gives it to Colton. She's really personified to us as like the figurehead of the women and the women-led majority within that women's tribe. And then it just sort of dissolves once Kim and Chelsea become a bit more at the forefront of the edit towards the swap. And then when the merge happens, like Sabrina is still regarded as a bit of a social threat, but it definitely has dulled a bit in the light of Kim really coming into her own. But that being said, now granted, it would be a very different season if Kim was not on, but were Kim like cut down in her prime if Troyzan was successful, as an example, Sabrina could be the odds-on favorite to take it all.
For sure. I always say that, like, because you just mentioned, it would be a different season if Kim were not there. This would be an entirely different season if Sabrina was not there in the beginning. I don't think that Kim wins this game without Sabrina being like the leader of Solani in the beginning. Like the way that she was just there to, like, they all voted her to be the leader. I think one of the things that Chelsea said, because I watched the episode a couple days ago, she was like, because they were trying to figure out, because they were so discombobulated as a tribe, they're trying to figure out, like, okay, so who can we have that's going to be the leader of the tribe? And Chelsea immediately was like, Sabrina, I nominate you because, like, you're straight to the point, you're direct, but you don't bark orders. You're just, I have no problem, like, going over a cliff with you. And Sabrina took it humbly. She was like, okay, you know what? Let's do it. And we got to see multiple episodes of her, at the top of the morning saying, okay, so who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do this? We got to keep it together. Colton, you got to go away. Colton, I love you, sis, but you got to go. Like, she was such a corraler and just like a mother to the tribe. So and she's just funny. She's just so funny. One of the Courtney at the top of the season had to get medically evacuated because she broke her wrist during the challenge. And I remember one of her confessionals, she was like, look, like, I know this might sound a little mean, but like, I'm just hopefully Courtney goes to the hospital. She starts feeling that air conditioning. She gets a glass of water. She's like, this is nice. And then she doesn't come back. So
Again, you're talking about this cast
funny.
saying the quiet part out loud. Yeah, that's definitely an example of that.
She was so funny. And I even saw, I think she released her audition video to get on the show, and I love the fact that she sort of comedically called out production. She was like, "Well, y'all know y'all need some color on there. Y'all know y'all need some color on there." So she's just such a fun person and a fun personality and character. And because I did a little digging up about who would come back to, and I was looking at it, some research about her this morning, and I saw that she's done. She wants to hold the experience that she had up there where it needs to be. And that makes me so sad because she's my number one one world wish list. I just it makes me so sad because I really feel like, because of the fact that she is so understated and she is so undervalued and underrated, I feel like she could come into the game if people don't really understand what kind of game she can play, and it would just be such an interesting experiment. So I'm heartbroken.
Yeah,
if she ever sees this, please reconsider, please.
We're heartbroken all over again like we were 9 years ago. And remember, Sabrina was on the ballot for second chances, though she has revealed after the fact that she was kind of coerced into doing it. But the thing that really is the smoking gun is that in her quarantine questionnaire, when asked if she'd play again, she said, "It was an absolute ride and honor and Jervis competing in what is considered by many to be the greatest game on earth. However, I'm done. I totally support the folks who go back a second and third time. The thrill can be an addiction that is hard to explain. Some things you do once, and this is my story. I have infinite memories and lessons from the show to last me 3 lifetimes." So, yeah, this is her written resignation, I think, from Survivor.
Which is exactly why she needs to come back. Like, I know that sounds like crazy. Like, the girl just said no, and no means no, guys.
40 chess.
But it's just like the fact that she has like the wherewithal, the mental, like that's where her mindset is. I just know that she could come back and murder this game. To be able to tell yourself and to temper yourself, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm good. That just represents the discipline that you need in a game like Survivor to win. So, again, I'm holding a candle out for you, sis. Like, if there is anything that might sway the girl, producers, do it.
All right, we're on 2 strikes with this final 3 right now, but maybe we'll get a hit with this next one. Chelsea. I think regarded as probably like the least out of the 3. She was certainly an interesting character. I think unfortunately she was the recipient of some wild stuff like Tarzan asking her to her face if she had work done and if she had a botched boob job and all that jazz. To the sort of cringy moment how she ends her Survivor career by asking to stand at the final tribal council. But if you are a Bravo fan, Chelsea has been seen in a very different light since her season. Aman, were you aware of her career on Southern Charm?
No, I was not aware of her career on Southern. What the hell is Southern Charm?
Yeah, so Southern Charm is a Bravo show that she was brought in on as the friend of actually Cameron Eubanks, who I believe is another reality TV alum. She was a Real World and Challenge alum. And Chelsea got brought on board. She was a recurring cast member on season 4, and then seasons 5 and 6, I believe she was a main cast member. So it's been a while. She ends up leaving the show. I think she attributes it largely to like wanting to be out of the reality TV spotlight. She is, I believe, 39 at the moment, and she kind of wanted to focus on raising a family outside of needing to be consistently on at all times and in front of the cameras. So I'm not sure how that would correspond with bringing somebody back again, but we've said throughout this process, Aman, that there is something there when you bring people back who have gone through so much in the time since they went away, where Chelsea was 26 the first time she played. And I think a lot has happened in her life in the 13 years since.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it would be interesting to see her come back, especially since I think a lot of her game, similarly to Sabrina's, is sort of overshadowed by the ultra perfection of Kim. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing her come back. Not my first pick, but Chelsea without a Kim or without a Sabrina, what does that look like? I'm interested.
And I think, especially in that post-merge stretch, it was kind of personified as Kim and Chelsea were the 2 in charge, and that, we have to get rid of Chelsea because that means then we'll get to Kim. So, yeah, it's always this interesting thing where when you break up powerful duos and what would one sort of look like without the other. Not to say these 2 are comparable to some of those other pairings that have existed through multiple Survivor seasons, but Chelsea might be somebody, and she has been asked back a couple times. I think she was in consideration for Cambodia and maybe Game Changers as well, and she turned both down. So I'm having trouble figuring out if she is really done with reality TV, or if Survivor was just not coming at a right moment for her.
Right. Hard to say, but I feel like towards the end of it, she really did get told by the jury that she didn't her game, she didn't perform well in the challenges. Her game wasn't as strong as the other 2, yada, yada, yada. So I feel like a redemption story is definitely something that would be interesting for her.
All right, let's move into our jury phase here. And so we have building up from the bottom here. Roll up with the sushi master himself, Jonas. We have the chicken stealer, which made a different name for himself on Naked and Afraid, Michael Jefferson. We have the helium voice, bum puzzled male model in Jay Byers. We have Leaf, who slept in a box and yeeted himself off a water slide. We have, of course, two of our aforementioned returnees in the form of Troyzan and Kat. We have Tarzan, the enigmatic plastic surgeon with a heart of gold and a vocabulary of a tenured college professor. We have Alicia and her mortal enemy, Christina. Suffice it to say, I personally am going to discount Alicia immediately. I will assume that she has changed and grown since a lot of the transgressions that she had on Survivor One World, but I also don't need to necessarily see her on my screen again for many reasons.
I have no interest in watching Alicia return. And again, like, people are people. We change, we evolve, we grow. But at the same time, you have to wonder why someone at 24 years of age is behaving the way that she behaved for a majority of this season. It's just too unsavory for me. It's not fun. I rooted for her demise the entire time, which was kind of fun, and it was good to see her get kicked off, but I don't need to see her get kicked off again. There is literally no winner's equity with this girl. Even if she has changed, I don't think that like her game is gonna like I'm not interested in your game.
Mm.
And I feel like half the people that are coming in are gonna know who you are and they're gonna be like, no. So it's a chop. It's a chop for me.
Well, let's see if we'll give a chop to people that were given the door in previous seasons here. Let's talk about Troyzan and Kat. Of course, the story of Troyzan is a distant one. This man has been applying for the show many a moon. He finally gets on in One World, where he walks away, definitely one of the biggest characters, and I believe in the running for maybe the fan favorite prize at the end, as he is mounting himself as sort of the quite literal last man standing against this formidable women's alliance. He wins at that key time, hence the "This is my island" diatribe that he goes on. It earns him a bid.
To which Sabrina's like, shut up.
Yeah, to which he is voted into the ballot for second chances, even though he does not make it onto the season. But they say, we're not done with you yet, Troyzan. They bring him on for Game Changers, where he is given, unfortunately, the most purple edit I think I've ever seen in a returnee season, especially for someone who makes it to the end, where basically the main things we remember from Troyzan is that he found an idol that kept him safe at Advantage Get-In, and he apparently has a massive schlong. And that's about it.
Oh,
so
God.
I think that, Troyzan, the character, is always interesting as someone who has bite to him, especially in his initial go. And I was intrigued at least by the idea of like, okay, let's see what happens when he comes back 12 seasons later. But whether it's me falling for the production narrative, there really was nothing there. And, not to say that his age of 62 is excluding him from anything, but I just don't feel I need to see Troyzan 3.0, 4.0 if you count the second chances ballot.
Yeah, it makes me wonder. I'm interested about that because I remember I kind of forgot when I was watching the season that he did come back and he makes it to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder like what the story is behind that purple edit. Like I'm wondering, because he was the last man standing. He was the "this is my island" guy. But that was obviously a detriment to his social game and just his game in general. So I'm wondering, so when he came back for Game Changers, was there okay, I need to sort of like do a 180, but the producers
Right.
didn't want that full 180. And so they were like, okay, well, if you're not going to give us what we want, then see you never. Bye.
Yeah, is
So
it a
I'm
bit like the tail wagging the dog, where was it that he was putting out his usual material and the editors just weren't having it? Or was it more so that, sort of like Eric and Karamoan, he was purposely playing a quiet, under the radar follower game, and there's just nothing to make out of that unless you're the winner of our season?
right. So I would hope that it's the latter because like it's nice to see people come back and sort of navigate how to change from the first time that they played. So if it is the latter, I would say I'm fine with Troyzan coming back for season 50 because you did one extreme, you did the other extreme. Now let's try to see if we can put it in the middle. So I'm interested. I'm not out on Troyzan.
All right, well, let's move one space to his left here and talk about Kat. One of the biggest characters of the season had so many quintessential Kat moments, whether it was her finding out Colton had appendicitis and reacting as if it was like a house life or death diagnosis, whether it was her winning a BLT at the auction and freaking out about the fact that it had bacon on it, whether it's her cousin coming out as her loved one's visit and she proceeded to get down on all fours and bark like a dog, or whether it was her being
Oh, I didn't reach that episode and I forgot. I repressed that. Oh my
and
God.
in that episode, she gets viscerally blindsided, where she is weeping fully in her final words and disparaging the fact that Alicia and Tarzan got further in the game than she did. She was so much gold with what she brought on that first season. Second season, she comes back and obviously gets more of a quiet edit until she makes one of the most impactful lines in Survivor history for demarcating pre-merge versus post-merge, when she gets voted out and mourns on Redemption Island. Nobody wants to date someone who doesn't make the merge. Of course, Aman, she is the person who is responsible for bringing Hayden Moss crossing the reality TV waters here as the first Big Brother Survivor crossover. But given where we left things in Blood versus Water, how are you feeling about a Kat with a third life, in a manner of speaking? Would you want to see Kat again?
Maybe. I mean, I felt like as far as One World goes, yes, like she has like such an infantile aura and persona.
She is only 22 at the time, and she is 34 now.
She is 34 now, but I still feel like there are certain parts of your personality that never go away. So I'm like interested to see what a 34-year-old baby looks like as opposed to 22-year-old baby. And I don't say that disparagingly. Hey, some people are just childlike, and it's not always a bad thing. Okay. You typically have more energy than the rest of us. They typically they just enjoy life a little bit more than the rest of us, and that's fine. So I do wonder, like, with a more tempered Kat, what does that look like? I mean, this is a girl that purposefully jumped into the water during that cross the balance beam challenge when she didn't even have to, but she wanted to because she wanted to make sure that she was the one that made it across first. So I feel like that competitive drive in somebody never ceases. So I think I've just talked myself into wanting Kat to come back. I want to see it.
Yeah, I mean, Kat has said in her quarantine questionnaire that she wished she played in her 30s. I mean, I think a lot of us say that people laud their 20s, but the 30s are where it's at, because for most of us, our brains are fully developed and we have most of our shit together where we're like, okay, I can sort of now take life by the horns and understand what I'm doing. I think Kat is also married as well. I saw a few members of the cast actually attend her wedding. So yes, she may approach it a bit, for lack of a better term, neutered, this Kat, but I'm sure she still has some claws to her. I'm sure, to reference another cat, a tiger can't change its stripes too much.
Exactly.
I want to move from these two people that we have seen their potential in other seasons to someone that I feel has a lot to give, and it's going to be a little random. But Aman, I want to talk about Jonas. What do you think about Jonas?
I like him. I think he's a generally likable person. I feel like he really was like always just like sort of in a rough spot at all times, like socially. Like even though people liked him, he was always like out of the loop on everything. I did like the fact that he stuck it to Tarzan a little bit, because Tarzan, as kooky and as entertaining as he is often very condescending. I mean, he even said it during one of the tribal councils. He was like, I hate when like I'm trying to give somebody advice that's going to help them and they can't see that it's going to help them. It drives me insane. It's like, okay, it's unsolicited though. No one's asking you. And I love the fact that he gets into that argument with him and he's like, don't effing interrupt me. Like, I'm trying to talk to you. Like you're just an ass. And I really enjoyed that moment for him. So I don't know. I feel like he's so understated of a character on the season that like him appearing on Survivor 50 is like, it feels like it's a non-starter, but like at the same time, we don't really know what the casting parameters for all these returning players are going to be for 50. Like what, like, is it supposed to be like another second chances type feel? Is it supposed to be like a Titans type feel? Is it like sort of like a mixed bag where we get people that you would have never thought are going to show up and we get a handful of them? So I don't know. I think for me, it really depends on like what the parameters of the season are, because if it's a bunch of people that are like bastions of Survivor, it's like, okay, well then no. But if there's more potential for other understated people to come back, then okay, I'm fine. Only considering what he had to endure, because I think that also kind of like that. I also weigh that in like who do I want to see come back? Like what did they have to endure that maybe they won't have to endure this time, and does that help them this time around? So
Endure and survive, to quote the tattoos on the winner of the season we're talking about tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, you talk about potential. And for me, Jonas was someone that I always kind of had my eyes drawn to in the 7 episodes he played. First off, because I'm always interested in the people that have the unconventional jobs, and Sushi Chef was definitely up there, especially
mm-hmm.
in a show that at the time was providing them with plenty of rice for him to cook with. But I feel like Jonas was also like one of the rare voices of sanity in that men's tribe where, like, yes, he worked closely with Colton, but he was somebody that would vocalize, including to the camera, like when Colton would go a little too aggro and get a little too out of control. He was the one that towards the tail end of the pre-merge was a bit like, am I making a deal with the devil right now?
Mm-hmm.
And did I
Yeah.
yoke my wagon to someone that was a bit unsustainable? Of course, it did not pay out for him in ways that he did not imagine. And I also look to the fact that, yes, he was the merge boot, but he was voted out at the merge because the opposition, which was, again, like the women plus the men of Solani in the form of Jay and Troyzan, thought that he was the biggest threat of those that were on the outside of that super alliance, that he was incredibly likable and down to earth. And so that made him a bigger threat over the kookier men around him. And it's unfortunate, to your point about that rivalry with Tarzan. Tarzan gets the last word, where after the whole poop or dirt controversy as well, when Tarzan washes his dirty ass drawers in the drinking
Ugh.
water, like, if I remember correctly, Jonas says goodbye to Tarzan and is like, no hard feelings. And Tarzan basically says, no, comma, hard feelings,
Yeah.
goodbye, which
Yeah.
would sink any chances he has of winning anyway. So I've always enjoyed Jonas. I don't know if his personality has ever been like incredibly sparkling or captivating in the way of some of these other people that we talked about, but he always felt like such a solid person to me that I think had some game to him, and that's arguably the reason why he's the first member of the jury.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that's a good point. I think that he did often sort of represent some type of like avatar for the audience in the beginning when the men were just crazy. Even though they were winning in the beginning, the tribe was just all types of wackadoo, and it was nice that there was at least one of the people that was like, okay, sure. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that I think he definitely would be an interesting choice, all because of the potential.
Yeah, and he is only 50 years old at this point, which again is definitely paling in comparison to some of the people on the tail end of the ages of this survey. That makes him about as old as someone like, he's a couple of years older than someone like Holly Hoffman, a couple of years younger than somebody like Coach, a year older than who else? Anthony Robinson from
Mm.
Fiji. So like, he definitely is still in an okay age to do well in a proverbial season 50. Now, that being said, I don't remember if he's still on social media. I don't know if he's expressed that he wouldn't go back, but sometimes I take, like, as long as you don't give me an explicit no, I'm going to put you in consideration.
Right, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move from our first juror to our last juror, because we talk about potential here. And Christina Cha, it is a tale of two seasons where, like, she is aggro in that first tribal council. And that's how you know that this cast is going to be a bit of a shit show, is they don't vote anybody out and she screams at someone because you're wrong, okay? So shut up within the first 3 days of the season. That's arguably the most fired up that she is. She unfortunately faces a very bad treatment from people like Alicia and Colton that I would even say verges on, outright tramples into overt racism at certain points. Luckily, she is able to prevail, get one over on her tormentors, and become the last one standing on them all, as well as the final juror. The downside is she goes from, like, a snapping shark in her first tribal council to a dead fish by the end of it, where the way at least is personified in the finale was her very much saying, yeah, I'm okay with going out in fourth place. It's fine. I had a good run.
Yeah, I think she just got beaten down by the game and
Mm.
by the people in it. Because I remember thinking the same thing. Like I loved it when she stuck it to Alicia in that tribal council because Alicia was wrong. she was, and Alicia was being extremely rude. So I loved that she had that bite. Obviously, you know, she was involving herself with someone that also is a snappy person. So sometimes, though, you can either continue to snap and the both of you are just going to continue to butt heads, or you can be like, you know what, I'm just going to get back at them later on, which is what she ends up saying in, I think, episode 2 or 3. She's like, look, like, all gloves are off. Like, I'm just going to do what I need to do to survive. Like, I'm just because I'm not like yelling anymore doesn't mean that I'm not in it to win it. So I appreciated that sort of drive, and it does sort of dwindle down, and I feel like she sort of becomes a passenger of the game as instead of an active player towards the end. And I think she was just tired. So I would be interested in seeing what she can do. It's sort of like similar to Jonas. Like, I feel like there is so much potential there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it's I'd be interested.
And she would be as well. She did say in her quarantine questionnaire, yes, definitely sign me up. After all the experience I learned, I definitely will be playing differently. I believe Christina is 41 years old, which again is a comparatively young age. And I also think that when she talks about what I've learned from this experience, I think she's not even speaking about life. I think it's also like the rear view mirror to her own game, and maybe not necessarily seeing, or perhaps seeing too much the writing on the wall and just kind of giving in and being like, you know what? It's fine. I had a good run. I'm going out here in 4th place. Maybe she could bring some of that day 3 attitude to day 23 and beyond. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be, spoiler alert, as we get into the wish list, a very odd one, maybe the oddest one we've done so far. Where, like, to be honest, there's really nobody from this cast that I'm like, yes, oh my God, I need to see you. And that's really like the first season where this has happened for me. I think it's more so this idea of throwing people on that can serve as fun what ifs of if they were granted another opportunity, what would they do with it?
Yeah.
Anything about the other 3 jurors that we haven't talked about? I would say Jay Byers was a fun talking head. Of course, he brings in the bum puzzled word when it comes to, again, that inimitable move of the men giving up immunity. He did have a fun run on a different CBS property where he was in the running on a contest to become the next male model for The Price is Right, like 10 years ago with Pete Yurkowski from Philippines. He made it all the way to 3rd place in that one, but unfortunately didn't win. Leaf was sort of a non-entity, except for, again, the random shots of him doing things and the way people were interacting with him. Tarzan is a freaking wild man. Listen to his talking with T-Bird that he did last year if you just want a bit of a checkup as to how he is doing, because I would say he's even more uncorked than how he was doing 10 years ago. But Tarzan is 76 years old, which is 1 year older than Rudy was in All Stars, which is the oldest a Survivor contestant has ever been. So suffice it to say, I think the doctor is out on this one.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm good. I think we've gotten enough. We have enough from him to fit 4 seasons. I think we're fine.
Well, let's see if we can find a quantum entanglement with anyone from the short list in our pre-jury portion. So we have Courtney Moon, who, for those that don't remember, gets medevaced when the very first thing they do in the first challenge is jump from a tower into a cargo net. She ends up sticking her arms out to brace her fall instinctually, breaks her wrist in the process, and is immediately medevaced. And then it turns out afterwards, I don't know if you remember this, Aman, but it was actually a blessing in disguise, because then after she was investigated by the med team, they actually found a tumor in her abdomen.
Oh,
and
yeah, I
so
forgot about that.
she ends up getting
Jeez.
treated for cancer in response to this kind of freak accident in Survivor One World. We have Nina, who was the cop that was not necessarily given a fair shake, where she goes out as a result of this women's majority. We have Matt Quinlan, the Rooster, who left the coop pretty early on as a result of, again, the Misfits turning on these popular guys. As a part of that, in a very different regard, we have Bill Polsley, who, of course, Colton and the others decide to, again, forego immunity to specifically go to tribal council to vote Bill out. We have the neat lady herself, Monica Culpepper, and we have someone that will return alongside her in Blood versus Water in the form of Colton. I'll start with Colton the same way I started with Alicia. Colton has appeared on Talking with T-Bird and done Reddit AMAs where I think it's become clear that time and life experiences has definitely matured him from the state that he was in One World, which was honestly pretty damn despicable. I think to a certain extent it was kind of fun to watch this guy kind of run around and cause chaos and become the surprising power player of the pre-merge, but it came at the expense of him doing outright discriminatory things towards contestants of color. He has again come out and said that since that time he has obviously become a lot more informed. He has faced tragedy in his life. Of course, his boyfriend, Caleb, who he appeared with on Blood versus Water, died in a worksite accident a few years back. And so I think that grief has also matured Colton a bit as well. So I wish him all the best in his endeavors. But if we remember how Jeff Probst treated him during his quit in Blood versus Water, he is 18 out of 18. In fact, I'd say 19 out of 18 of players that production would like to see come back.
Yeah, I don't need Colton, and my condolences, and all of the kindness that I can send towards him for all the things that he's been going through since Survivor. But sometimes there are certain transgressions that you don't get second chances for. The fact that Jeff did bring him back at all, I think, is probably one of the worst decisions that he's ever made, and I'm glad that Jeff ended up paying for it in the fact that Colton's ass quit the game. Calling Bill ghetto trash, no, nope, gotta go.
Yeah, doing this is a secret scene that got cut, but there was footage of him and Alicia also doing like slanty eyes with their fingers to do an impression of Christina, and no. Even in 2012, that shit wasn't flying.
It was 2012. Like this is the Obama era, right? And you're on TV calling. Nah, I'm good. And you never want to wish pain or medical emergency on anyone, but like
it was a bit of karmically induced appendicitis. Yeah, I mean,
God's timing is always right, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild that all that happens to Christina in particular, and like even when Monica's voted out, they're chewing her out, being like, "Yeah, you're gonna suffer now. You're definitely a marked person. You're not gonna survive another day in this game." And then Colton goes into the woods, crumbles in pain, and the first person to comfort him is Christina of all people. And so he ends up getting taken out, idle in pocket. There was some scuttlebutt from Colton himself that he actually was in line to be the third Medivac returnee for the next season Survivor Philippines, but due to the reception of Colton over the airing of Survivor One World, he was pulled at the last second in favor of Jonathan Penner. Like you said, maybe that's what ended up forming into his return appearance in Blood versus Water, where I do feel like Jeff retroactively saying that Colton quit his first season is maybe a bit of a misattribution, considering that, like, is the other option to let your appendix explode? I know he talks about how that's how you do it on Survivor, but maybe that's not how you do it on Survivor. Let's talk about the other returnee in this pre-merge cast, though. Monica Culpepper makes it all the way to the final three, second place, and then does come back as her husband's loved one when he makes it to second place in Game Changers. Do you feel we've seen all we need to see from this neat lady, or is there another time for her?
I don't know. I went back and forth on her because I do feel like, she got beaten up in this season with, Colton and Alicia and whoever else. And then she kind of got beaten up towards the end of her run by her when she made it to the final three. And like the jury rather was very, very sort of a little vicious with her. So yeah, I think in terms of like redemption, I would be interested to see how she plays. I feel like she came into the game, but I feel like she's played both games similarly. So I don't necessarily know if she would change anything. So in that regard, I'm not as interested, but in terms of like maybe her not having to experience some of the BS that she did, maybe I'm interested. I don't know. I can't quite.
For me, I sort of compare her to like the Dawn Meehan who ends up succumbing to a similar fate a season beforehand of like, here's the mother type who makes it to the end of the game and then gets kind of chewed out by the jury. Though in this case, it was that Dawn was too cutthroat. In Monica's case, it was that she wasn't, from their perspective, didn't really do anything, right? That she purposely went to the end with Jervis and Tyson and didn't necessarily buck the trend there. So I feel from a story perspective, I've kind of seen all I needed to from Monica. I felt that Brad was always the more interesting player just from like the pure chaos and entertainment that he brought. Again, Monica's fine. She's a neat lady. And I'm glad she got the opportunity to come back because I did feel she got pretty hosed and pretty swap screwed in her season where, yes, again, she was on the outside of that 5-person alliance, but then Alicia immediately hops over with the men at the swap, and she is done right there as the 5th boot. But it's one of those cases for me where seeing her play again, I kind of got that question answered where I didn't for a lot of these other people.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, like I said, I feel like if she came back again, I don't know what she would change. And I don't know if that necessarily leads her to the final 3 again, and then the same thing happens and she doesn't get any votes. So she probably is. I think her story probably is done.
Well, let's talk about someone who again got a bad shake in this pre-merge. Bill Posley. So
Yes.
Bill, such a unique person. This guy is a veteran, but also was a stand-up comedian and actor at the time that they taped One World. And both on screen and off screen, his entire narrative was around Colton to the extent where, again, Colton helps organize this tribe-wide throwing of the challenge just to single-handedly get rid of Bill. He gets his own revenge. Allegedly, he threw Colton's idol into the ocean, which then Colton ended up getting a new one. But that's definitely a first in Survivor history. But yeah, Bill really got a bad shake of everything. Now, granted, again, the 4 bros should have known better than to believe that they had an iron grip on the tribe when they only had 4. But it was really just a 1-2 punch of losing Matt and then Bill himself being on the receiving end of implicit and explicit bias.
Yeah, I think that Bill deserves a chance to come back simply for the fact that he was voted out because Colton's racist. Like, I mean, we can just call a spade a spade. Like, he literally got voted out because Colton didn't like the fact that he was a stand-up comedian. He doesn't have a real job. He's ghetto trash. Like, and that's why they gave away immunity to send him home. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
and
give
Bill,
him another shot.
yeah, and Bill has also made an interesting name for himself. He's written for a bunch of shows since then and acted in a few, including a CBS property in The Neighborhood. He's still doing stand-up, I believe, if you check out his social media. And so that's the other thing as well. I feel like he's someone that could bring a lot of charm in confessional that we didn't necessarily get to see maybe just due to the situation around him. And so I think he also has the potential to make some really fun sound bites. I don't know if he has been asked yet if he would come back. He did not do a quarantine questionnaire. So maybe due to the circumstances around him, he would say, nah, I'm done with that. But also maybe news about, the burgeoning diversity initiative of the new era could be something much like a lot of other Black Survivor players that we've talked about could be enough to bring him back to the table.
Yeah, and that was my thought when it came to Sabrina as well, because we know like when she did say no, she also said that the show just needed more diversity, and this was pre the diversity initiative. So it makes me wonder, okay, well, maybe since that the climate of the game has changed so much over the years and people are a lot more educated, and for a fact that you won't be having to deal with somebody like Colton, I don't know, throw your hat back in the ring and see what you can do, because we really you're right, like everything that was about Bill was about Colton, and that's just very, very unfortunate.
Yeah. And so with apologies to Matt, to Nina, to Courtney, I think we're good on them. Courtney would be interesting for like a medevac second chances, but I don't know if she necessarily, granted, from our edit, she didn't really seem to do much in those first couple days besides say the word ow, but I don't know if there's necessarily a lot of there for our first 3 boots.
Yeah, no, I'm good on Matt. Nina she was fine. I feel like she did kind of get screwed, so like in that respect, sure. And Courtney, I guess it could be kind of interesting. Be like, Survivor literally saved her life. She's a cancer survivor because of Survivor. So maybe maybe that is an interesting story to tell. But yeah, other than that, yeah, whatever.
All right. So Aman, we gotta figure out what the hell we're doing with this, because there are so many people that were like, maybe. I don't know if we feel good enough to put like 3 or even 4 people on here. I feel like we could put our heads together to throw maybe a couple people on the short list.
I mean, the one that I feel like is most probable is probably Kat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be good with putting Kat on there. I think we could definitely put Kat on there.
How many are we allowed to have?
So we can have up to 3. I sometimes squeeze out a 4th spot if there's like a superstar 4th returning for this cast. I do not think that's the case with One World, if that's okay.
No, there's not. And we can't choose people that already said that they're not going to do it, right?
Yeah. I think we want to be at least a little bit immersed in reality here.
Right.
So
okay.
I'll throw Jonas on there as well. I think Jonas could be, at least Jonas is someone I like want to see in the fan poll. Like let's be realistic here.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody from Survivor One World is going to necessarily make the cast of Survivor 50, even if it is an old school versus new school second chance thing. They're not plucking back into the annals of one of the most unpopular seasons to be like, hey, we haven't talked to you in a while. Why don't you come on and show your face so everyone can remember what you brought to the screen? This, to me, is more so an exercise of who are some people to throw in the fan vote here. And I feel like Jonas could be someone that would be interesting to at least discuss and have people remember and vote on.
Okay. So the only other one that we were sort of like, this could probably work is Chelsea, but I'm also kind of the mindset that if she said no so many times, I have to imagine that she's probably going to say no again.
Yeah.
But then again, it's Survivor 50, though. It's not like it's a regular returnee season of some arbitrary number. It is the 50th season of Survivor. So I do wonder if that makes people's heads sort of like, it's a landmark season. Do you want to be a part of history, essentially? And maybe that does make her say yes.
I don't know, because would Chelsea Meissner really want to, stick her hand back in that scorpion nest and venture into getting bit again, right?
Especially since she said that she has a show right now, right?
She left Southern Charm and is now, I think, from what has been personified, has kind of gone off the grid to more so focus on raising a family than be on camera.
She's probably done then.
So the other person I would possibly throw on here would be a Bill Posley. And this would be purely like fan fiction. Let's give this guy another shot. The producers won't, but we want to give this guy some love for a very raw hand he was dealt.
You know what? I'm completely fine with that because, quite frankly, Jeff Probst, I'm talking to you. If you're going to give Colton a second chance, you can give Bill a second chance.
There we go. An eye for an eye. So we have making our ballot this time in order of finish. Kat Ederson, 34. Jonas Atsuji, 50. And Bill Posley, 40. Last thing I want to ask, Aman, anybody from this cast that you would want to see on another reality show besides Survivor? I will not count Kim, considering that she is quite literally on another TV show, or Chelsea during that brief period of time.
The sadistic part of me wants to see Alicia go on House of Villains because I know that she is nothing compared to some of the likes of the people that are going to be on that show, and she would get her ass reamed out. So I kind of want to see that sadistically. I think it'd be interesting to see somebody like Sabrina on Traitors. I think that would be a very interesting pick.
Is there anyone, because Big Brother is your bread and butter, is there anyone from this cast that you would want to see on a Big Brother season?
Big Brother. I wouldn't mind seeing somebody like Kat on Big Brother. She brought Hayden into her world. Ooh. I would love to see her in Hayden's world. I think that'd be interesting, especially now that she's a little old. I think that'd be a very interesting train wreck. Let's leave it at that.
Well, yeah, because then I think Kat would sort of have Spider-Man pointing me moments with like younger versions of herself, right? Because I do feel like the people they were casting around that era of Survivor are still some of the types that they cast on Big Brother now. Yeah. So it could be very fun to have Kat look in this mirror of what she was like 12 years ago.
You're like, these kids are crazy. It's like, yes, girl, that was you. That was you, girl.
All right, so as I mentioned, tomorrow we are going to brighter pastures here as we go to the rainy season in the Philippines, season 25. What was looked at, again, as a way out of the dark ages. There is a renaissance in the form of what Survivor Philippines brings, which is 3 medevac players, one of which was nearly Colton. We have, of course, the infamous Matt Singh tribe. This brings us Malcolm. This brings us Denise. This brings us Abby Maria. Aman, I'm intrigued. Who would make your short list from the Philippines?
I mean, definitely Malcolm. I feel like Denise is probably good now. Russell's an interesting one. I've met him a couple of times. He always shows up.
I was gonna say he's a Philly boy, right?
He's a Philly boy. I always see him at the Bryson One Presents events. So I think that would be an interesting one for him. And maybe Abby Maria. Maybe.
All right, so we shall see. To your point with those last 2 names, this has been a season that has brought on and also garnered a fair number of returnees, and we'll be talking about them and first-time players alike as I'm joined by, big piece of news. Jake O'Kane will be joining me tomorrow to talk about the castaways of Survivor Philippines. Jake, of course, used Survivor Philippines as a cheat code to win an advantage in the finale of his season, so it'll be very fun to get his thoughts on it all. In the meantime, Aman, such a great time. I mean, you talked about why seasons like One World are so interesting to crack into, especially from the retrospective perspective and getting into people that have been given a shot, have not been given a shot, either fairly or unfairly. What would you like to plug at this moment? Of course, at the time that this is being released, we are barreling down a mere 2 weeks away from BB26 coming back.
Yes, I'm so excited. You can follow me everywhere at Aman Adwin, and obviously you can find me at RHAP all summer long covering Big Brother 26. I feel like this is like the first time in a while where like I feel like I'm not like bloated with Big Brother stuff, because I mean, we all know the story about Big Brother Canada, and like, yes, I was watching Big Brother Canada 12, but I sort of did take a bit of a step back with it. So I feel like I've finally had like a long year break, and I'm ready to get back into it again. So I'm praying for a good season. I'm also covering RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 9 with Liana and Beth. So you can always check us out over there as well.
Yeah, what are you thinking so far? Now, granted, this will come out a few weeks after the fact, so maybe the position on the whole charity non-elimination season has changed, but the temperature at this moment, what are your thoughts on it so far now that we're, I think, over halfway through?
I do think that there are certain elements of the game that are lost when it's for charity, which sounds so shitty to say because it's, it's charity.
How dare they?
I mean, I do think that some of the competitive edge is gone. I do think some of the stakes are also gone. And I do wish that maybe some of these queens were brought back for an actual competitive season. I feel like Vanjie not being able to be on another like purely competitive season is a bit of a waste. The same thing for Plastique. And the same thing for Chanel, quite frankly. So I like the cast on paper. I just don't necessarily like this season for them, but I'm still having a good time. It's still Drag Race at the end of the day. And there is still a little bit of drama. So I'm good for that. So yeah.
All right. Well, we move on from talk of drag to talk of a Brazilian drag-un tomorrow with Jake O'Kane as we talk about Survivor Philippines and add some more names to this ever-growing shortlist. Thank you all so much for listening. Let us know your thoughts in the comments about who you would want to see back from Survivor One World. Until tomorrow, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.